So, moving on to our third segment of the month, and that is the well, it's some shocking news. Are you prepared? Have you
I'm
centered yourself?
I'm focused. I'm ready. I'm ready for anything.
Okay. The bloodstains, it's dramatic. The bloodstains on the Shroud of Turin are probably fake.
What?
Yeah, I know, I know.
The Shroud of Turin is a fake.
Yeah, it's
You, I'm sorry.
uh,
You must be kidding me. The amount of research that's done, and the Shroud of Turin is a fake.
yeah, I know. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
This cloth that supposedly carries the image of the crucified Christ,
yeah,
that has been a religious icon, that has been the focus of people's faith since the Middle Ages, is a fake.
it's hard to believe. now, now, to be fair, I know obviously we're laying it on thick, and I'm not laughing at people's faith.
No.
What I'm laughing at is the fact that this, in some respects, is news. In so much as, but in so much as, well, for a while now, archaeologists and historians have considered the Turin Shroud to be a medieval fake. In so much as the cloth has been radiocarbon dated, it dates to between 1260 and 1390 or thereabouts. And so, of course, the bloodstains, in that sense, are not actually from a man who was crucified and stabbed in the side 2,000 years ago. But beyond the, as it were, the faux hilarity, I think that there's a couple of interesting elements here as well that really appeal to me as a first of all, actually, as a scientist, but also as an anthropologist. So
Mm.
first of all, I appreciate the fact that this study has been done using forensic science techniques.
Yeah.
You had chemist Luigi Garcelli of the University of Pavia in Italy
Mhm.
using real and synthetic blood on cloth to test the orientation of the stains that are seen in on the Turin Shroud. And it's clear that the shroud was stained at a time when it was folded probably at least 4, if not 6 times by the look of it. In so much as, have you ever done marbling? Yeah. So you put
Yeah,
ink in water and put the paper through that, and
that's
out
right.
comes
Yeah.
this beautiful pattern. Well, that's sort of what's happened here, in so much as you can see that the stains are mirrored on a couple of different axes. So clearly it was folded and then stained. Um, and this analysis has shown that this stain pattern has not come from the wounds as described in, for example, the Gospels when it comes
Yeah.
to the historical Jesus. No, I'm not going to get into what people think of that person, as it were. But in this instance, it's so I appreciate the science. I appreciate the fact that they've done this, but as an anthropologist, and we got talking almost immediately when we were doing the agenda for this month's watching brief about whether or not this actually compromises the shroud as a as an article of faith in that sense. Uh, Arguably, this acts as a focus for faith still, even if it is a fake, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to people of faith, and I'm not one, I have to say, then it is what it is.
Hmm. Hmm.
People, you know, in the end, um, archaeologists deal with evidence,
Mm-hmm.
and belief not backed by evidence is simply a belief.
Yes.
Now, I have to say that we've known really that the Turin Shroud is a fake since the 90s,
Yes.
and that's the 1390s. Um, because
So in my head, I went to like Oasis and neon shell suits. So no,
no,
1390.
no. At that time, the Bishop d'Arcy wrote to the then Pope and said that Henri de Poitiers, who was the Bishop of Troyes in the mid 15th century, mid 14th century, had actually inspected the Shroud, which was in the possession of a French knight called Geoffrey de Charnay. And as Darcy wrote, Henri de Poitiers had discovered what was called the fraud, and even interviewed the artist who created it, and wrote that it was a work of human skill, not miraculously wrought or bestowed.
Fascinating.
So the Catholic Church itself said it was a fraudulent relic back in the 1390s.
And that is one of the key points, isn't it? Is whether or not actually we or say one calls this a relic or an icon. And
successive popes have played with words in
yeah, they dance around it. Yeah. So probably the Pope who came most close, as it were, closest to identifying this as being a relic in the same or in a similar category to things like, say, saints' finger bones, or I think once I saw an eyeball preserved in a box, this kind of thing.
Yes.
Now, apparently, there was someone who was being boiled alive in the 16th century in southern England, and someone grabbed their eyeball from the pot and put it in a box. It's grim stuff, but nonetheless, being in that category of being a physical relic that is attached to someone who is identified as, for example, a saint or maybe a martyr. John Paul II used the magic word relic, according to the National Catholic Reporter,
indeed,
calling the shroud a distinguished relic linked to the mystery of our redemption.
And in fact, back in that, he was following Pius XII in 1936, who called it a holy thing, perhaps like nothing else. At the same time, though, more the two most recent popes, Benedict XVI and now Pope Francis, have been much more nuanced in terms of the way they've described it. I mean, Francis.
First of all, Pope Benedict said that the Holy Shroud eloquently reminds us of Jesus' suffering.
Absolutely. And Francis said that it was an icon of a man scourged and crucified. An icon, of course, being a picture that's meant to inspire devotion, but it is an artistic creation, not a relic. In Catholic doctrine. So it's a much more nuanced approach. Of course, this has been a significant addition to the pilgrim offer of Turin Cathedral since the early Renaissance. So nobody wants to completely destroy the. To people of faith, it is what it is, and if they want it to be an icon, or even there's nothing that you or I can say, or the scientists can say, that will change their mind. And there'll always be another scientist or someone who will claim to use scientific evidence to come along and say, oh, and just in the background reading I've done on this while we've been prepping this piece, there've been, for example, recent papers suggesting that the cloth could have been made in Israel, Palestine in the period of the first century AD.
And to be fair, I mean, I know a few people, as it were, of faith, and those people, they don't think the Turin Shroud is real, and so in that sense, I don't think one has to be attached to the other. But also, actually, here, I mean, okay, fine, if it's a key part of income, to be blunt, for the Turin Cathedral, then maybe what they need to do is offer selfies. If it's not a real thing, if it's not from 2,000 years ago, get it out. Let people, get a selfie with the thing, wrap themselves up in it. Of course, I'm joking, but the fact that that this question of authenticity is an interesting one. And in that sense, it's still nonetheless an authentic icon. It just isn't an authentic cloth that wrapped up.
Exactly. In fact, it's if the dating is correct, and the modern the carbon dating appears to agree absolutely with the Bishop Darcy's conclusion that he wrote to the Pope, that it was created in the mid 14th century. It's a fascinating example of mid 14th century religious art. In fact, a unique example of mid 14th century religious art. Well,
actually, and it reminds me of, because there were similar things that happened. I think most churches at one point had something that was their local attraction. So there's a church, I've forgotten where it is. There's a church that I remember reading about somewhere in England at least, where they supposedly have the claw marks of Satan himself on the
Yes.
door. Where
Yeah.
I mean, clearly, it's basically what they've done is they paid the blacksmith to come in with a piece of metal and just scrape the thing,
Yeah.
but hot metal. But it's dramatic, it's evocative, and it makes for a good story. And that's especially at a time when parish identity and income and the pot, as it were, that was coming from maybe a church's mother, a monastery or whatever, was much less global in terms of income. Much less, you couldn't put out the same sort of reach to get your roof fixed. It makes perfect sense to have some of this stuff turn up, and so yeah, in that sense, I've got no problem with the Turin Shroud, but I continue to be fascinated by the way that it's deployed and the way
Yeah.
that people talk about it.
And I think the way that people deploy historical and scientific evidence to talk about it,
Yeah,
and that even in a science based discourse,
mm.
people can find evidence for both extremes of view. One, that it's absolutely authentic, on the other side that it's 100% faked.
Fake news, fake news.
Yeah.
So
What goes around comes around.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
if there's one thing that studying archaeology and history gives you, it's a perspective, and that it's all been done before in some form. The old gag about history repeats itself first as tragedy and then as farce. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're quite there. We're not quite at the farce yet with the Turin Shroud, but I think just in general, perhaps we're at the black comedy stage.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
From the
anyway.
divine to the profane.